The massive storm is also wreaking havoc on the campaign trail tonight. Governor Romney and Vice President Biden have canceled weekend events along the East Coast, where many states have already declared a state of emergency. In addition to disrupting travel, the storm is also threatening to derail early voters. But which candidate could be more affected? CNN contributors Reihan, Salam, and Roland Martin are out front. Good to see both of you. And Roland, I have to say this, couldn't come at a worse time. Both candidates obviously are trying to make a push in the battleground states. The president was going to be in a lot of these states, making a big and intense push. Does it affect one of them more than the other?
No, it affects both of them, and really game this thing out. Imagine here you are. Now, remember, early voting is one thing, but what do you do if you have significant damage? If you have Americans' loss of life, and you still have commercials up on television, you're pounding away at each other. For the president, I think it actually helps him a little bit more because remember, he's a sitting president.
Right.
He gets to be presidential. He might have to tour these areas, talk to residents, declare emergency areas as well. But it's going to be hard for each campaign to actually justify in North Carolina, in New Hampshire, in let's say in Virginia, running ads attacking each other while Americans are suffering due to this storm. So they're going to have a tough call to make.
Reihan, let me ask you about that point. The president, he is a sitting president. He's going to have to tour if there are disaster areas and people who are dead. So not only does it give him that moment. I mean, Mitt Romney can do that too, but it does give that moment to the president. What about all these nasty ads they're running about each other in all these states? Isn't that inappropriate too?
I think that it's part of a spirited campaign. I think those ads are, designed to draw contrasts, and I think that's fair enough. But I certainly think it's true that, as Roland had suggested, that it's all about the net effect. Because, again, both campaigns are having to cancel events, right?
Yes.
So the thing is that it's really important to see and the key thing is Virginia. That's a swing state, right? But a lot of these other states, they're not swing states. New Hampshire is a swing state. It's not clear how it's going to impact New Hampshire. So in terms of places where...
I mean, the way you see John King lay out these maps, if Virginia were to, feel sympathetic to the president going through this and him touring and being their commander-in-chief, that could turn the whole thing.
Yeah, but I think that actually voters, their views about the candidates at this point are pretty baked in. I can't see how you really want to be mindful of whether or not your voters are getting to the polls, because it's true that, Democratic voters tend to be more likely to be early voters, but of course Republican voters tend to be more likely to be elderly. And so it's possible that they will be heavily impacted by a storm that actually limits their mobility and what have you. So I think that there's a lot to be concerned about on both sides.
I have one thing, Erin. Here's the problem for the president. He has to figure out when do I remain at the White House, monitoring this whole deal, being the president of the United States while also trying to campaign. Mitt Romney doesn't have to do that. He can actually still go to Ohio, go to Wisconsin, go out west, so they can say, sure, we'll take down ads in Virginia, but the campaign still continues. And so I think that's where it's going to be dicey for the president, justifying being president, but also being candidate Obama.
Right. And I guess for Romney, the flip of what you said, Roland, might be you don't want to be out in Nevada saying vote for me while the East Coast is suffering. That's a bad image too, right?
It's all about the optics, and you don't want people saying how callous of you. Americans are suffering. Here they are, they have damaged homes, and they're having to rebuild their lives, and you're running around spending millions of dollars on campaign ads. It's not a good look for either candidate. That's
right. All right, so let's talk about early voting. Reihan, you make the case that this is going to affect both of them. But the people that don't vote in the 3 or 4 days that this affects their state, 2 days, whatever it is, some of them might not vote at all, right? I mean, you think these votes are still they're going to come out later, or?
That's a really thorny question. My guess is that those voters are going to turn out if they are intensely committed to either candidate. If they're not intensely committed, that's a concern for both campaigns. They need to actually motivate those guys. And that would be true whether or not we had an enormous storm. So I think that the question is who is at the margin? And I think that if they were really that marginal that they wouldn't show up later on, then it's possible that there are all kinds of other things that could have deterred them from turning out to vote.
But the
problem is damage, Erin.
Yeah.
The problem is damage. I mean, again, forget just power lines being down. If you have homes destroyed, having to be rebuilt, if you have folks' cars damaged or whatever, trust me, from a priority standpoint, you're sitting here trying to deal with your life, your children, your family, the elderly. And so that's the real issue. I wouldn't be surprised in those states right now where you have early voting, you're going to see massive turnout tomorrow trying to get ahead of this storm. I've been talking to people in North Carolina, in Ohio, even in Illinois. They say lines have been long. They've been running out of paper. And so I probably would say the places where they're voting early right now, they're going to be crashing and burning Saturday and Sunday in advance of this storm.
All right, it shows that they're passionate, to your point. Thanks to both. Great to see you, and have a a good weekend.